things, and probably a topic for another entire discussion, but there are things that instant gratification just cannot give us. And those things tend to be some of the most important things in our lives.
Exactly. And having something to attach them to magically helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Put aside that instant gratification you were talking about in terms of a health regimen. Okay.
Right. Right.
Long term, if you have a day where, you're trying to eat more healthy and you have a day where, oh God, for whatever reason, you go out and have a dozen donuts. If you were focused on this month or this week.
So that was you yesterday, wasn't it?
No, it really wasn't. If you are focused on the right now and this month, you are more likely to say, fuck it, I blew it, and give up. If it's part of a long range, it's a bump in the road as opposed to a self-defeating activity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I think part of that, and especially on the dark moon with the introspection, is sometimes I feel like I'm sort of open to needing to rationalize or explain or justify what I've done. So sitting in front of a double black or a black moon, which double dark is what I was thinking. Yeah. Sitting in front of those is really a moment for me introspectively to say, all right, what have you put into this? Mm-hmm. Is this magic that is working and should be working because you're putting into it what you need to, or was this a New Year's resolution that you really haven't worked at? And so, of course, your magic's not going to work as strong.
Uh-huh. And is it important enough to really devote time and energy to?
Right.
Sometimes we need to acknowledge that those New Year's resolutions may be wonderful in theory, but they're not relevant to our lives. And we're beating ourselves up for breaking them, but we went into it knowing that it was an unrealistic change. How's that?
Sure. Okay. Sure. So. Now, supermoons, we should be able to do super energy work, right?
Yeah, that's the whole idea. The moon is bigger. So there's...
it's closer, yeah.
Yeah, it's closer, as they say. And the idea is there is that extra boost of energy when you think about it. On the path, we tend to look at what astrological sign the moon is in at that moment. Because why see if we have a potential, because you really can use any kind of magic, but why not bring in an extra corresponding boost and use it to manifest something that matches the astrological sign in some way?
Sure. And that's something that, starting to read through the path and whatnot, I'm adding into my own practice, because certainly I have done monthly moon magic for different things for quite a few years now. Mm-hmm. But I haven't looked out that next level in my mental model of the sky to see. But yeah, if I'm looking at a full moon and it's in Sagittarius, although I haven't learned yet the specific different correspondences and whatnot, it makes sense that I would leverage the full moon being faced in that direction as opposed to the full moon being in Cancer or Libra or something. So this stuff is all going to be really new to me, but it makes sense to me wherever I'm facing that full moon or that dark moon. Beyond it is a place. I just haven't learned myself that wheel yet, but there is a wheel or a place there that there's a background or a context. Mm-hmm. So the background of my full moon or my dark nights of the moon has an astrological context that is different each month. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And if you want to get really crazy, you can think in terms of sometimes you can have the moon be in the same astrological sign because of the way the sky works. And I'm sure there's another mathematical model for that. You can have the moon be in Sagittarius, say 3 months in a row. but seasonally, the year is turning. So you're going to have a different energy of a season in there, as well as the you can go on and on and on, layering stuff and have a really good time. And sometimes you start layering, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we're going to have a supermoon. We should do something just because. And all of a sudden, you've discovered the exact same thing you should be doing. It's like the universe says, if you look at this and this and this, don't you see this is what you need? And that's happened to us more than once.
I have to say that my own personal experience on supermoons has been sit in awe and be told. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say I'm so looking forward to experiencing a black moon with a magical mindset. And here again, that black moon is going to have an astrological context to it.
Oh, exactly. And then you mentioned, well, if there's a supermoon, there's got to be an opposite. And of course, a balance, for want of a word. And it turns out there's a micromoon, which I didn't even consider. So thank you for opening up my eyes to that possibility. And that, if you look it up, it says it's the apogee. It's the farthest distance from the Earth. So
it's a full moon, but it's the full moon that is at the time where the moon is the farthest from the Earth.
So it looks smaller in the night sky than what we normally see. Hence the name micromoon. Dun, dun, dun. But the idea is, okay, the energy's still there, but maybe it's going to take a little longer to manifest. Or this might be a time you want to layer on all those correspondences to boost the energy to a more normal level.
I could see that. And I could also see trying to do internal or shadow work around a black micromoon. Mm-hmm. Could be very difficult to the point of, afterward I would have gone, what the heck went wrong with that ritual? Mm-hmm. But now that I can understand it ahead of time and can sort of look at the lunar weather, so to speak, I could say, don't do that on that night. That's just not good for you.
Yeah, and the other piece, I think, is, yes, you can do magic anytime, period. All right, but why not, for one of the better words, set the odds in your favor for success? Which is
absolutely.
Talk about supermoons and micromoons and the different things that happen that can increase or maybe delay or not have it turn out exactly as we wanted, because we've had some spectacular failures, both of us, trying to do it.
Or perhaps we're going to get exactly what we want, but it's going to happen in a way that's a lot more subtle and natural, as opposed to sharp and abrupt and bang, this is direct application of power.
Exactly. I think so. And then to keep going, lunar eclipses. Who knew there were so many kinds?
Yeah, right. All kinds of eclipses.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've got full where, we've all seen pictures of those, or maybe experienced them, where the sun, the moon seems to disappear and then come back.
Yep.
Which is kind of awesome when you watch it carefully. Or a partial eclipse, which makes you think that some sort of god or dragon or something equally good has taken a bite out of the moon. And then it comes back. And then my personal favorite, because I thought it was cool, was the penumbral, which is where there's kind of a hazy shadow over the moon, which makes me wonder how many times have we just thought it was clouds in the sky.
Sure.
And it was actually a penumbral eclipse.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more people that are not aware that those are a thing or that happen.
Yeah.
And it's, like you say, it's a subtle effect on the moon, but as far as visually, but the physical lineup that happens there, and just sort of a grazing effect, is something that you can sort of leverage into the magic that you're doing at that kind of point.
Mm-hmm. Well, we looked at it and said, okay, it's kind of like you've got a moon in the sky, whatever phase it's in. It seems to happen mathematically, again, more on a full moon, or maybe we just see it more at that point. But seeing it on the face of the moon. It's like bringing the dark moon energy into, for want of a better word, the light moon's energy at the same time.
Sure.
So you could do something that is both projective and receptive, or receptive and projective at the same time.
Well, and for some reason, what my mind went to is sublimation, which is a form of sort of transmutation or something like that. But sublimation is when you go directly from a solid to a gas without having a liquid state. So to just run the metaphor right into the ground here, during that moment, I pictured a great big pair of ice tongs dragging a huge, massive block of dry ice out into the sunshine.
Okay.
And as the sun hits that, instead of the ice melting to water, it flashes right off to instantly being vapor and steam. And during that process, so many things are changed, but inside the water molecules don't change at all.
Okay.
So it's sort of neat for me to be able to visualize a form of transmutation over there where, using my current circumstances right now in my mundane life as a metaphor here, you know, there are huge sweeping changes that I'm trying to make, but at the same time, I recognize that I am I, and I am going to continue to be this I through those changes. And sort of like the water molecules in that moment of sublimation, you know, I'm going through a bunch of huge changes, but I'm still water.
And you're still you. Your essence doesn't change, in other words.
Right.
External is changing dramatically.
Yeah, see, this makes me want to have all of these eclipses and micromoons right away so that I can experience them all, which is fun when the universe makes me wait.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it gives you time to plan what you want to do with them.
Well, and create intention about not only what I want to do with them, but how I'm going to see and observe them.
I think so. Got to admit, it's kind of fun. The more you start looking at stuff, if you, in a lot of what I think this whole thing about the different moons really relates to is being willing to take something we think we know or are familiar with and look at it in different ways. How else can I see it?
Absolutely. Yep. Being able to take different contextual perspectives and observe which angles we see in a more magical way and which angles we may see perhaps in a more mundane way. And so then in the act of us seeing, we are choosing what directions we want to see things from. And that's bringing magic into mundane.
Well, sure it is. And I think that's the fun part. I mean, what you said, we were talking earlier before we started podcasting about how so much of the path all comes back to balance. There has to be both for it to work. It's like you can't appreciate light unless you have dark.
Absolutely. You can't truly appreciate love until you have understood grief.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds weird, but coming from my philosophy of having my wife transition to being in the next room to being over my shoulder, I understand so much more about the how and why of my love for her.
And her love.
But I had to have both, and her love for me, certainly. But I had to have both of those perspectives before I could really understand clearly what it was that I was seeing.
Yeah, I think so. And it relates to a whole lot of mundane stuff, as well. That's, and we talk about balance. Do not think that we think we have these lives of perfect balance if you walk the path. We have beaten that one to death in terms of balance is an ideal.
Well, I like to tell people that I actually do have balance. There are days when I walk around with rose-colored glasses and I think everything is going to be wonderful and perfect. But there are also days when I have shit-colored glasses and I walk around and everything is brown and drippy and nasty and life just smells bad.